Hi everyone, my name is Andrew Hoff and I'll be talking about mini-tubular ceramics for semi-truck diesel particulate filters and with the broader goal of creating advanced air filtration solutions for a cleaner world. I've given this presentation a number of times now, and one of the questions that always comes up is whether or not this is just a dying technology, whether diesel is on its way out. Well, I'm here to tell you that diesel is here to stay, and diesel particulate filters are one of the big reasons why. So as countries around the world have been moving towards stricter emissions targets, and particularly towards soot-free standards for diesel, you have to use technologies like diesel particulate filters to address that need. And so because of this, diesel particulate filters, perhaps not uniquely, but very rarely seen in the fossil fuel space, they don't have a regulatory headwind, they have a regulatory tailwind. And because of all the regulatory changes, it's actually a growing market. It's expected to grow at 10% a year through 2025. Another concern I've heard is about vehicle electrification. But a lot of the electrification efforts have focused on light-duty passenger vehicles. Heavy-duty vehicles are much harder to electrify. And you don't have nearly as much regulatory risk due to single jurisdictions as you might in other technologies. On the right, you see a graph there, and it shows that no single jurisdiction has even a particularly large portion of the overall diesel market. So even if you get regulatory changes in a single jurisdiction, it doesn't really change the overall status of the technology. And we've been working on these technologies for a while at Livermore. Now, not for diesel particulate filters, but we've been working on ceramic nanofibers for over 15 years, focused on the nuclear safety, nuclear facility safety applications. Ceramics because we wanted things that can survive in fires, and nanofibers because nanofibers are better filters than anything on the market. Now you might be asking, well, why don't I see more nanofiber products? Well, it's more expensive. And so for your typical consumer application, it doesn't really give you enough benefit to justify the cost, but it does make a difference for these diesel particulate filters. Now, the ceramic nanofibers in particular are much harder to manufacture, and it's this manufacturing issue that's resulted in Livermore inventing mini-tubular ceramics. We've invented this to solve a number of manufacturing problems. So what you do is you take these sheets of nanofibers, you roll them into like 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter tubes, and you put them in a packed bed type system. If you have a water filter at home that's activated carbon-based, it's the exact same principle at play. What we found is that while this solved a lot of the manufacturing problems, it also gives better performance than other filtration solution. And importantly, for entering the market, the packed bed form factor means it's very easily adjustable. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. So let's talk about diesel particulate filters. So diesel particulate filters are just one component of diesel exhaust management. So you see a picture of it on the right there. That ceramic piece is the diesel particulate filter, but you also have other parts. You have the catalytic converters. You might have diesel exhaust fluid or a diesel oxidation catalyst. And despite only being one part of this system, it's a big market. It's $25 billion a year with a lot of different submarkets. And these things aren't cheap. They're hundreds to even thousands of dollars per unit. And like I said earlier, because of the changing regulatory environment, it's not just a big market, it's growing and growing pretty rapidly. So how do mini-tubular ceramics actually address this market? Well, let's start with what a semi-truck diesel particulate filter needs. You need sufficient filtration efficiency to meet regulatory requirements. And I'd love to tell you that people just want the best filter that you can put on their car, and it's not true. And this is because there's actually a trade-off between filtration efficiency and back pressure. The higher the efficiency, the higher the back pressure, which means the lower the fuel economy. So there's an emissions and fuel economy trade-off. Now, so once you reach that regulatory requirement, what you want to do is minimize your back pressure. They need to be capable of regeneration so that when the soot gets onto these filters, you need to burn it off to keep your filter working efficiently. And that's regeneration, and it needs to be able to survive that. That's one of the reasons it needs to be ceramic or a very high temperature metal. These need to be very low cost. The automotive space is a very cost sensitive industry. And so you are always trying to reduce costs as much as possible. And we're going to have to match the pricing of existing applications. And scale is the other big one. This is not making a handful of units. You're making tens to hundreds of thousands of units, even millions of filters per year. And so where do MTCs fit in? Well, we get better performance. So compared to existing products on the market, we calculated and estimated a 25% reduction in pressure drop. And that was a design we had that wasn't even optimized for pressure drop. If you can get that 25% reduction in pressure drop, we think that we can get a 3% improvement in fuel economy, which may not sound like much, but keep in mind, semi-trucks are on the road all day long. So the average semi-truck saves $800 a year in fuel savings in the United States. The average long-distance semi-truck saves $1,600 per year in fuel savings. We think we can actually get better price in certain applications. Because of the significant composition space available, we can add catalytic capability without very expensive catalysts like platinum group metals, and design flexibility. The pack bed approach means we can match existing geometries. No matter how big or how small they make their filters for a particular truck, we just pour in more or less of these tubes, and it's a drop-in replacement for the existing solution. So it's good for market entry, but longer term, it also gives manufacturers more flexibility. So what does this market look like? Well, there's 2.3 million semi-trucks sold worldwide in 2019. And all of these not all of them require it, but all the big markets require diesel particulate filters for these heavy duty trucks. And so when you're talking about your $25 billion market for diesel particulate filters, your semi-trucks are about $4 billion of that. And we think that we can get a quarter of it, or $1 billion. So when we're talking about market entry, we're thinking the first sales will need the aftermarket, because that gives you easy access, and it gives you a chance to get your foot in the door and a chance to prove the technology. But longer term, the truck freight market is incredibly fragmented. You need to work with the truck OEMs and get partnerships there to get the volume you need to make a successful business. And I think that performance improvements that our technology provides and the cost savings it offers could lead to rapid market penetration. So what are we selling? What are we doing here? We are trying to make these tubes. Now, there's a lot of other components here, even something like the housing of these tubes. We are not trying to address that. We are just replacing that piece of ceramic in there. And so we're trying to do that manufacturing in-house. And we are thinking that it's unclear how long it's going to take to market. We are working with truck OEMs right now to identify acceptance criteria, but once it's accepted, because we think we'll get such rapid uptake, I suspect the manufacturing equipment availability is going to be the limit to production. And as you can see, I expect that for relatively modest upfront costs, the medium to long-term value in this technology is incredibly compelling. So where are we in the technology development front? Well, it's unfortunate, but right now we hand make these MTCs, and they're 1 millimeter cube at a time. You can't even make good engineering prototypes in that case. So the first year is $2 million to make prototype scale equipment that's fully automated. This confirms the value in technologically relevant prototypes. You start doing the testing that the OEMs require, and you're starting to do customer and partner discovery. Phase 2 for $5 million, we can build a pilot scale equipment and capacity, further develop those partnerships and begin product trials before you move to phase 3, which is the initial mass production and commercial sales. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how these mini-tubular ceramics are a platform technology due to a combination of the high surface area, functionalization potential, composition space available, and low pressure drop. There are a lot of applications that might be able to use this technology in catalytic, chemical, or biological applications. The team, you have myself. I got my PhD in materials science at Caltech. Before I came to Livermore, I worked out of an MIT spinoff startup that had a successful exit. My colleague is James Kelly. He got his PhD in ceramics at Alfred University, and notably, he was the person that invented these MTCs. If we're going to be a successful company, we're going to need a lot of partnerships. And so we've been working on de-risking some of the technology side by partnering with companies to do nanofiber manufacturing at pilot scale. We've been working with Argonne National Lab, Nanoscience Analytical, and Dipole Materials. We're going to need a partnership to manufacture these MTCs. And so we're in discussions with Dipole Materials there. And of course, we'll need market entry. So we're in initial discussions with Corning, which is a manufacturer of DPFs, and Ford. And as you can see, this is an incredibly exciting technology, an exciting opportunity, and that's why I'm really excited to take any questions you have. Thank you for your time.